My name is Clara, and I'm 32 years old. The notification popped up on my phone at 2:15 p.m. on a quiet Saturday afternoon while I was in the middle of repotting a monstera plant on my back porch. It was an email notification forwarded to me directly from my husband, Mark. Attached was a draft legal agreement prepared by an estate lawyer. At the top of the document, in bold, formal lettering, was the title Intra-Family Property Reassignment and Maintenance Accord. Below it was a short, cheerful message from my mother-in-law, Evelyn. Clara, dear, since you and Mark received your grandfather's historic estate debt-free, we've put together a small family agreement. As family, it's only fair that we spread the blessings around. Please sign on page 4 so we can move forward with renovating the east wing for my retirement suite and transferring the guest house deed to Mark's brother, Tyler. I stared at the screen, my garden gloves still coated in fresh soil. 6 months ago, my beloved grandfather passed away, leaving me his most cherished asset, a fully restored 4-acre lakeside historic stone house that had been in my family for 3 generations. It wasn't just property, it was my childhood memory, paid off completely through 40 years of my grandfather's hard work, and left strictly to me in his will as my sole personal inheritance. Now, Evelyn, a woman who had spent the last 5 years criticizing every decision I made, from my cooking to my career, was treating my family's heritage like a buffet table for her favored son. I picked up my phone and sent a short 4-word email directly to Evelyn, CCing her lawyer. Not a single chance. No excuses, no polite softening, just those 4 words. Less than 7 minutes later, my front door burst open. Evelyn didn't even knock. She marched into my hallway, her heel taps echoing sharply against the hardwood, holding a printed copy of the agreement in her hand like a weapon. "Clara," she barked, her voice booming through the foyer, "what is the meaning of this childish email? Your husband's brother is struggling to get on his feet, and I deserve a quiet place to retire. You didn't even earn this house. It was given to you. How dare you hoard it all to yourself while your husband's family suffers?" I slowly took off my gardening gloves, walked into the kitchen, and leaned against the counter, keeping my composure. "Evelyn," I said softly, keeping my voice dead steady, "this house is my personal inheritance from my grandfather. It has nothing to do with Tyler, and it certainly has nothing to do with you." "Your husband's family is your family," she sneered, slamming the paper onto the marble island. "Mark is my son. Everything you own is half his, which means our family has a say in what happens here. Tyler needs housing stability, and I am not going to sit by and watch you act like a selfish aristocrat while my youngest child rents a cramped apartment." This was classic Evelyn. Ever since I married Mark 4 years ago, Evelyn made it her personal mission to ensure that Tyler, the pampered golden child younger brother, never had to face the real world. When Tyler dropped out of college, Evelyn forced Mark to pay off his credit card bills. When Tyler lost 3 jobs in 2 years because of creative differences, Evelyn guilt-tripped Mark into giving him interest-free loans that were never repaid. Meanwhile, Mark and I worked 60-hour weeks. We budgeted, saved, and built our lives without asking anyone for a penny. When my grandfather fell ill 2 years ago, it wasn't Evelyn or Tyler who spent weekends managing his care, driving him to chemotherapy appointments, or overseeing his property repairs. It was me, with Mark quietly supporting me every step of the way. My grandfather loved Mark like a grandson, but he knew how toxic Evelyn was. That was why his will was bulletproof. The property was willed solely and exclusively to me as separate personal property, explicitly protected from marital property claims under state inheritance law. When Mark walked into the kitchen 10 minutes later, exhausted from his weekend shift at the hospital, Evelyn immediately turned her crocodile tears on. "Mark," she sobbed, clutching her chest, "look at how your wife speaks to your mother. I asked for a simple family arrangement so Tyler could have a home, and she talked to me like I was a criminal. Tell her that as your wife, she needs to respect this family." Mark looked at his mother, then looked at the printed legal contract on the counter. He took a deep breath, pinched the bridge of his nose, and looked Evelyn straight in the eye. "Mom," Mark said quietly, "get out of our house." Evelyn's face turned completely red. "What did you say to me?" "I said, get out," Mark repeated, his voice firmer this time. "This house belongs to Clara. It was her grandfather's. You have no right to demand legal deeds to property you didn't pay for, and you have no right to come into our home and harass my wife." Evelyn gasped, clutching her designer handbag. "You will regret choosing this outsider over your own blood, Mark. We will see what the family has to say about this." She stormed out, slamming the door so hard the glass rattled. For 2 weeks, things went quiet. Too quiet. Evelyn launched a massive smear campaign across the extended family. Aunts, uncles, and distant cousins began bombarding my phone with guilt-tripping text messages, calling me a greedy daughter-in-law who was breaking up a family. I ignored them all, but then an envelope arrived in the mail from the local city planning and zoning department. It was an official notice of an upcoming public hearing for a boundary survey and land partition application filed for our address. My stomach dropped. I immediately logged into the county clerk's digital property portal using my parcel ID number. What I found made my blood run cold. 3 weeks earlier, while I was out of town attending a work conference, Evelyn had taken advantage of an old, unrevoked limited power of attorney document that Mark had signed years ago, long before we were married, when he was managing his late father's small estate taxes. Using that outdated document, along with a fraudulent claim that Mark was a co-owner of the deed, Evelyn had submitted a formal application to the county to partition 2 acres of my property, subdivide the parcel, and register a secondary building permit under Tyler's name. She had even paid a $4,500 non-refundable filing fee to the city planning office, forging Mark's signature as a co-applicant to force the division through before the county realized the deed was solely in my name. She hadn't just made an unreasonable request, she'd committed outright fraud to steal half of my grandfather's land right out of under me. I didn't scream, I didn't call Evelyn, I didn't even tell Mark right away. Instead, I picked up my phone and called my grandfather's estate attorney, Arthur, a seasoned 68-year-old lawyer who had protected my family's legal assets for over 30 years. "Arthur," I said, my voice completely cold, "we have a problem." I emailed him the planning notice, the forged partition documents, and the digital paper trail from the county portal. There was a long silence on the phone as Arthur reviewed the files. When he spoke again, his voice was smooth and sharp as a razor. "Clara," Arthur said quietly, "your mother-in-law has just handed us everything we need on a silver platter. Not only is this partition legally invalid because Mark is not on the deed, but filing forged property transfers using an expired power of attorney constitutes felony record falsification." "What do we do?" I asked.
"We don't just stop the hearing," Arthur replied with a subtle chuckle. "We let the planning board meeting happen. Let her bring her lawyer, her family, and her arrogance. And then we execute a formal revocation and notice of illegal clouding of title, right in front of the board." 2 weeks later, the day of the public city council and zoning hearing arrived. Evelyn turned up in her finest outfit, flanked by Tyler, her real estate consultant, and 3 sympathetic aunts she had brought along for moral support. She looked triumphant, holding her color-coded folders, fully believing she had outsmarted me. When the board chairman called parcel 402 to the podium, Evelyn stepped up with a confident smile. "Members of the board," Evelyn announced grandly into the microphone, "we are requesting a simple family land partition for our multi-generational estate to build affordable housing for my son, Tyler. All preliminary fees have been paid, and